I sat in the stillness of my apartment the night before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My phone rang, slicing through the quiet. It was Richard, my fiancé. Hello? Richard, is everything okay? I asked, sensing something off in his voice. Elena, I can't marry you, Richard said, his voice devoid of the warmth I knew. A cold wave of shock washed over me. What do you mean? This isn't funny, Richard. It's not a joke, Elena. I'm already married, to someone else. His words were like a dagger to my heart. Married? But we're getting married tomorrow. How could you do this? I struggled to keep my voice steady. I just can't be with someone who overshadows me. You're a top executive, and I'm not. It's too much for me. His tone was emotionless. So this was about his ego. You knew about my job. For 2 years you said nothing, and now this? I need someone simpler, someone who doesn't outdo me. The mix of hurt and disbelief inside me was boiling into anger. And you decide this now, the night before our wedding? Who is she, Richard? It doesn't matter. I've made my choice. You coward, I hissed, anger surging. You let me plan our life together, and now you're backing out like this. I'm sorry, Elena. It is what it is. You're not sorry. You're a coward. I'm glad I know your true colors before it's too late. There was a pause. You'll regret this, Elena. You need me. I don't need a man who doesn't respect me. Goodbye, Richard. I ended the call, my hand shaking with a mix of rage and shock. Sitting alone, the magnitude of the conversation hit me. The man I thought I knew was nothing but a lie. But amidst the hurt, I felt a surprising relief. This wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. My chance to rebuild my life without Richard's deceitful shadow. My heart hardened with determination. Richard had wounded me deeply, but I wouldn't let him get away with it. He would regret crossing me. I would make sure of that. I lay awake that night, the darkness of my bedroom mirroring the turmoil in my mind. How had I not seen Richard's true colors? Our relationship, once a source of joy, now felt like a well-crafted facade. The painful realization stung. I thought back to how it all started. My uncle, a well-respected businessman, had introduced me to Richard. He's a promising sales manager, he had said. You two might hit it off. I was reluctant, but I agreed to meet Richard out of respect for my uncle. Our first meeting was at a quiet cafe. Richard was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my career as a marketing executive. We clicked instantly. I thought I had found someone who understood and respected my ambitions. But as I lay there, replaying our conversations, the signs were clear. Richard's subtle digs at my achievements, his veiled comments about women in leadership, they were all red flags I had ignored. He was never proud of me. He was intimidated by me. I remembered the times he'd belittle my work. It's just marketing, Elena. It's not like you're saving lives, he'd scoff. His words, once brushed off as harmless jokes, now echoed in my mind as clear indicators of his resentment. It dawned on me that his recent behavior, the late nights, the sudden business trips, it wasn't just work. He was seeing someone else. The pieces fell into place, forming a picture of betrayal. I got out of bed, my mind racing with anger and hurt. Richard had humiliated me, but I wasn't going to let him have the last word. He had underestimated me, and that was his biggest mistake. I opened my laptop and began to draft an email to my colleagues. Richard and I had invited them to our wedding, and they deserved to know the truth. I wrote with a clear purpose, detailing Richard's betrayal without sounding bitter. I wanted the facts to speak for themselves. As I hit send, a sense of empowerment washed over me. This was just the beginning. Richard had tried to break me, but instead he had awakened a strength I never knew I had. I would make him regret ever taking me for granted. The game had just begun. The next morning I woke up to a flurry of messages. Colleagues, friends, family, everyone was shocked. The news of Richard's deceit had spread like wildfire. There was an outpouring of support for me, but among these, one message caught my eye. It was from Richard. Can we meet? I think there's been a misunderstanding, his message read. Misunderstanding? The audacity of that word made my blood boil. I agreed to meet him, not for reconciliation, but to confront him, to face the man who had tried to break me. We met at a park, a neutral ground away from prying eyes. Richard was there, looking disheveled, a stark contrast to the composed man I once knew. Elena, thank you for meeting me. I think you got it all wrong, he started, but I cut him off. Save it, Richard. There's nothing you can say to justify your actions. You're a liar and a cheat. What did you expect, calling off our wedding and admitting you're already married? Richard's face reddened. I didn't expect you to react this way. You're blowing this out of proportion. Out of proportion? You were living a double life, Richard. What did you expect me to do? Smile and wish you a happy marriage? He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know I messed up, but can't we put this behind us? I mean, we were good together, weren't we? I stared at him in disbelief. Put this behind us? You humiliated me, Richard, and now you expect me to just forget it? Elena, please, I know I've made a mistake, but I need you. My job is at risk because of this mess. You have connections. You can help me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want my help? After everything you've done? He took a step closer. Elena, we can sort this out. I know people are talking, but we can fix this. Together. I stepped back, my resolve hardening. The only thing that needs fixing is your moral compass, Richard. We are done. And as for your job, you should have thought about that before you betrayed me. I turned and walked away, leaving Richard standing there, a picture of desperation. I felt a surge of strength within me. Richard thought he could manipulate me, but he was wrong. I was not the same person he had toyed with. The game had changed, and I was now the one in control. The days following my confrontation with Richard were a whirlwind. My mind was constantly racing, not with sadness but with a burning desire for retribution. Richard had tried to crush me, but he had only fueled my determination. I started by reaching out to a few trusted colleagues and friends, laying the groundwork for my plan. Word of mouth was powerful, and I intended to use it to expose Richard's true character. I shared my story not as a victim, but as a survivor of deceit. My narrative was factual, yet poignant, a tale of betrayal by a man who was a master of manipulation. Then came the opportunity I was waiting for. An industry event was coming up, one Richard and I were supposed to attend together. I decided to go alone, knowing well that Richard would be there. The evening of the event, I walked into the room with confidence. I could feel the eyes on me, the whispered conversations. I spotted Richard in the crowd, his face a mask of unease. As I mingled, I overheard snippets of conversation. That's Elena. Can you believe what Richard did to her? The word was spreading, just as I had planned. Then, Richard approached me, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. Elena, we need to talk. You're ruining me. I looked him straight in the eyes. I'm not doing anything, Richard. If your reputation is ruined, you have only yourself to blame. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Making me the villain. I pulled my arm away. I don't need to make you a villain, Richard. You did that all by yourself. As I walked away, I could feel Richard's eyes burning into my back, but I didn't care. I was no longer the woman he thought he could control. The event was a success. By the end of the night, Richard's deceit was the talk of the town. His professional reputation was crumbling, just as he had tried to shatter mine. But this was just the beginning. I knew Richard would not go down without a fight. I needed to be ready for whatever he had planned. My resolve was firm. I would not back down. This was my battle, and I was determined to win. A few days after the industry event, I was at my office when my phone buzzed with an unexpected call. It was Richard. Against my better judgment, I answered, curiosity getting the better of me. Elena, you need to stop this madness. Richard's voice was laced with frustration. This isn't my doing, Richard. It's the consequence of your actions, I replied coolly. You're destroying my career. I've lost clients, friends. His voice trailed off into a mix of anger and desperation. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to betray me and lie to everyone, I retorted. I need your help, Elena. You have the power to fix this, to clear my name, he pleaded. Help you? After everything you've done? You must be delusional. I couldn't hide the contempt in my voice. Elena, please, we were good together once. Can't you remember that? There was a hint of something in his voice that sounded almost like sincerity. All I remember is a liar who was leading a double life, I snapped back. There was a pause on the line, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. It was colder, more calculating. You'll regret this, Elena. If I go down, I'll make sure you come down with me. A chill ran down my spine at his threat, but I refused to show my fear. Is that a threat, Richard? It's a promise, he said, his voice now a menacing whisper. Good luck with that, I said, and ended the call. As I sat back in my chair, I realized that this was far from over. Richard's threat loomed over me, but I was not about to let him intimidate me. I had come too far to back down now. I started to document everything, the calls, messages, any interaction with Richard. If he was planning to come after me, I would be ready. But as I delved deeper into my preparations, I found an unexpected ally. One of Richard's colleagues reached out to me, offering information about Richard's past misdemeanors at work, instances of credit stealing, manipulation, even harassment. It was more than I could have hoped for. Armed with this new information, I knew what I had to do. It was time to take the fight to Richard. I was going to expose him for who he truly was, not just to our social circle, but to his professional world as well. Richard had started this war, but I was going to finish it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. With the information provided by Richard's colleague, I meticulously compiled a dossier of his professional misconduct. It was a damning portrait of a man who had built his career on deceit and manipulation. I reached out to Richard's company's HR department, presenting them with the evidence. The response was swift and decisive. Richard was suspended pending a full investigation. The news spread quickly, and soon Richard's professional reputation was in tatters. But I wasn't done yet. I had one last card to play. I filed a legal claim against Richard for emotional distress and the financial losses incurred due to the canceled wedding. It was a bold move, but I was determined to hold him accountable. As I walked out of my lawyer's office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had stood up to Richard, and I had won. But it was a hollow victory. The man I had once loved was now nothing but a bitter memory. In the midst of all this, my uncle reached out to me. "Elena, you've handled this situation with incredible strength and grace," he said. I shrugged. I did what I had to do. "There's something I want to discuss with you," he continued. "I've been thinking about retirement, and I believe you're the perfect person to take over the business." I was taken aback. "Me? But, Uncle, there are others far more qualified." "You have a keen mind for business, Elena. You've shown that time and again. I can't think of anyone better to lead the company into the future," he insisted. I was hesitant at first, but as we talked, the idea began to take root. This was my chance to step out of Richard's shadow and make a name for myself. "I'll do it," I finally said. "I'll take over the business." My uncle smiled. "I knew you would. I have every confidence in you." As I left my uncle's office, I felt a sense of purpose and excitement for the first time in months. I was going to lead my uncle's company, and I was going to make it my own. Richard had tried to break me, but he had only made me stronger. I was no longer the woman he had betrayed. I was a leader, a fighter, and a survivor. As I looked ahead to the future, I knew there were challenges ahead, but I was ready for them. I had emerged from this ordeal stronger and more determined than ever. Richard's betrayal had been the catalyst for my transformation. I had lost a fiancé, but I had found myself. And that was worth more than any wedding could ever be.